She buried her mother in February of this year. She survived divorce and left her relearning who she was. And she wrote a book called We Move Forward about the exact moment when staying stuck in grief stops being an option and rebuilding becomes the only path left. Today's guest didn't just study grief, she's living inside of it right now while building the very support system she wishes she had. She's here to tell you what grief actually does to your body and why just moving on isn't how any of this works. Welcome back. Welcome to Divorcing Strong, the podcast that pulls no punches when it comes to divorce. I'm Becky Sampson, better known as Bulldog Becky Brockovich, and I'm here to give you the straight talk, the strategies, and the subpoena secrets you won't hear anywhere else. With expert guests and proven advice, you'll learn your rights, your options, and gain your power that encourages a fair and equitable outcome. Divorce doesn't have to break you. It can build you. Let's get to it. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Divorcing Strong podcast. I'm Becky Sampson, your host, and we did an earlier show. I'm excited to do two shows. I'm getting to the point where I'm like doing 2 or 3 shows every Thursday. So Thursday seems to be my day, but today, we're going to be meeting with a gal that I met probably about a month and a half ago, maybe a couple months ago. And we briefly met. She didn't know that I was doing this divorcing podcast. And I'm like, you've got to come on because I want you to be able to share your story and tell everybody like why she's so passionate about creating support groups for people going through divorce. So yes, I also want to remind anyone, if you are watching us on YouTube, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this episode. If you also know someone that's going through divorce or a family member or a friend, I always say, please share these resources with them. Many times someone going through a divorce does not even know that there's a tremendous amount of people out here that are searching to support you through this, because most of us have been through it ourselves. And we're here to be able to share with you the support. Also, I want to remind you, for those of you that you would like the free download right there, you can go to the QR code. That is actually a list of 100 divorce legal terms. And I always say the more educated you are in the process, even though you're dealing with an attorney or you're doing it on your own, or if you're working with a mediator, that sort of thing, you're just going to be so much better off if you download those terms and study them. And anything that you don't understand, go research what it means. They will help you understand what your rights are. And I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. So So yes, I'm all about knowledge is power or influence, so to speak. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit about our guest. So if you've ever been told or told yourself that you should be over it by now, and you're starting to wonder if there's something wrong with you because you just can't move on, stop right there. Today's episode was recorded for you, or is going to be going live for you today. My guest, Shelly Summers-Anderson, is a certified master life coach, grief researcher, and the author of We Move Forward, a guidebook for surviving and healing through loss, divorce, and grief. She's also a woman who recently lost her mother and who knows exactly what it feels like when grief shows up in your body, like exhaustion, like brain fog, and like heaviness in your chest that won't lift. So welcome to the show today, Shelly.
Hello. Hello.
Well, Shelly and I had the opportunity of talking for a little bit longer than I normally do before our show. So I've gotten to know her a little bit more. Yeah. And my goodness, you've been through a lot. And so sorry about your mom. You also lost your dad just a few years before that. So this is going to be a little bit different of a podcast, because we're going to kind of the difference with loss, grief, also at this age in the midlife.
Yeah.
When we're dealing with aging parents as well. So before we kind of jump into that, tell us the backstory of what got you into this industry, kind of your story, and what makes you so passionate about helping people through divorce.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited. This is really fun. So in 2018, I found myself in the midst of going through a divorce. Been married for 28 years and had a husband who decided he didn't want to be married anymore. And that was January.
It's devastating.
January of 2018. We had 3 kids. 2 of them were out of the house and had a 14-year-old still at home. And she went with her dad. My youngest went with her dad. And I found myself like, holy moly, because I had been, either I had been a stay-at-home mom, but I'd also had a salon in my house. I've been a licensed cosmetologist for 36 years. And at that point, I had nothing. I literally, there were a lot of things that went into the whole aspect, but I literally was homeless. So I was couch hopping on a few friends' couches and going through this whole divorce process. And when I moved into the bedroom of one of my girlfriends, to just stay there till I could find an apartment for myself, she said, "You need to go to this support group." And it was called Divorce Care. And it like, when I say it saved me, it did. It literally saved me, because it got me out of myself, out of my own head, and, thinking about, okay, I saw other people. And, the first night I went to this support group, there must be a look that everybody has when I walked in, like, the deer in the headlights kind of thing. And I don't know how many people like came up to me as like, "It's going to be okay."
I know that's, well, first of all, people that have been through it or going through it understand it. And I said this earlier on another podcast is that you really, really, truly don't understand the grief, the panic that, especially, and by the way, you're not alone. There's a lot of people, especially women. I don't know if you know the statistic, 44% of women end up coming out of divorce in a financial poverty, in financial poverty.
Right.
And it's like, that's why I said at the beginning, I'm like, if you don't know your rights, then you don't have any rights. You don't know what you're advocating for.
Right. So, well, and so I was going through all this. And so I had to find an attorney and everything. So I went through this. Anyway, the end of 2018, the divorce was final. I stayed another year in South Dakota, and at Christmas of 2018, my mom had called and said my dad had started having mini strokes, and I'm an only child. So I was living outside of Utah, and, my youngest didn't really want to have a relationship with me. And so I ended up in 2019 moving back to Utah, and have spent the last 6 years caring for aging parents. So, and my dad passed away in 2021, January of 2021. And then my mom just passed February of this year. So yeah, it's been a lot in the last, I wouldn't wish the last.
And you got remarried.
And I got remarried. Yes, I did. And bless his heart. I don't know. He needs sainthood, I think, because, somebody that would take on me and my parents, most people have, the kid baggage. I had parent baggage.
Well, and that's what happens. I mean, that's one of the things I'd love to talk about this whole, I mean, at our age, like you said, you mentioned gray divorce. Explain people what gray divorce is.
So there's actually, right now, since 1990, the average age of divorce is over 50. So anyone who is over 50 years old who is getting divorced, that's what they are calling gray divorce. And then there is actually a 43% rise in people getting divorced at the age of 65 and older. So it's just like, it's so, I think part of it is, yes, hormones. Yes, also being empty nesters where you have spent the last 20 to 30 years in the muck of it, of raising kids and everything. And then the kids leave and you're like, hey, who is this person I married? And you have nothing in common anymore. So yeah, this is where we are at now in midlife.
Well, and I think that's exactly what I was going to ask you is what did you think that would be the cause of it? And you just brought up one of them is I do think that aging parents is another issue that we do have to deal with when it comes to, remarrying or blending families, or, it's a little bit more complicated because I feel like this world's gotten a lot more complicated, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like, well, and I mean, not even that. It's like, even if you're like, okay, I've been married, done the marriage thing, I've done the divorce thing, never getting married again. How many of us have said that? Never getting married again.
I never thought I'd get married again.
Me either. Right there with you.
But both of us have really good husbands, so I do want people to know.
Yes.
But look, just because they're, a second, third time, there are good men out there, and I have to attest that mine is amazing. So
there definitely are. And the funny thing is that I actually went to elementary school with the one that my current husband, and my mom was his 6th grade teacher.
Okay, Shelly, I can't even tell you how many people tell me that. Like they like the second or third marriage is like, okay, where have you been? Like, why didn't we just do it right the first time?
I know.
Why did we have to go on this journey and then come back and find each other all these years later?
I know. Well, and it's like, I think when we're young, we have different expectations of life. And I certainly did. And I was in it to win it, with the first marriage. And, he didn't want, I mean, there's lots of things that go into getting a divorce, but it was his choice to leave. And, and now my life is okay. But the reason the thing about my book is that I wrote the book, the story and the introduction of my book had been in my head since like 3 days after, I was abandoned, basically. And, so just to let you'll find it in the book. I was actually in the bathtub asleep. I had caught a cold and I was in the bathtub asleep when he and my daughter left. So, wow. Yeah. So
your daughter was how old? I want to just show everybody your book real quick, because you gave it to me when we went to the event, which I love. We Move Forward, Surviving and Healing Through Loss, Divorce, and Grief. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. She was 14.
Oh, okay.
So she was 14. But so it's like everybody has a divorce story too, and there's so much that goes into this. But one of the things that really stuck out to me when I was in the midst of going to the support group and everything, was that grief is not linear at all. No. It does not just go, okay, you go through the denial, you go through the anger, then you go through the acceptance, and then you go through. No, because it will come back at you in so many different ways. And I mean, even still, there are moments of anger and resentment that come, but it is not, I now know that I can't idealize. I can't idealize what that was, because that was not ideal. And now that I'm, on the outside looking in, it was definitely not ideal. But, so,
well, and by the way, it's very, very normal if somebody's listening to this and going, why am I crying one moment and the next day I'm okay, and then I feel okay for a couple of days, and the next thing I know it feels like my life is over. And one of the things, especially, I don't know if you have found this as well for you, but I would love to have you talk more about this, is that it takes years and years sometimes to connect the dots of what's happened. Or right. At least to, like, especially if you're dealing with someone that's not been healthy, or you weren't in a relationship that was healthy. I mean, there's years later that I've gone back and go, oh, yeah, that makes sense of why that happened now. It may not be immediately after the divorce, or it may be even in future relationships that you're wow, now it makes sense.
So I'm gonna say a quote before I forget it, because where you said, like, when you're either in another relationship, one of the biggest things that I know to be true is that no one, when you are in the middle of a divorce, no one should be dating or trying to be in another relationship for at least a year, because it's like you are a walking, talking open wound, and all you're going to do is bleed on somebody else. That's all you're going to do. So you need to heal yourself first. And I talk about it in the book. There were moments where I like could barely get out of bed. Like I had to drag myself out of bed, and you feel like you have, cement weights on your feet, but you do it because, you know, my driving force was my three kids. I was going to become a better version of myself for those three kids. And then also I feel like you have to learn to trust your own instincts. And I did not even know who I was. I had gotten married at 22, and I was not a fully formed human at 22. And there were moments I'd be at the grocery store and I had just been pushing my cart and putting stuff in it. And this probably, I don't know, about a month or so into me actually having my own apartment and things, I was pushing this cart and I looked in it and there was not one thing in that cart that I liked, that I really liked.
Wow.
But it was habit. It was habit of, family, kids, the whole thing. And I had I had an anxiety attack. I left the cart. I walked out of the grocery store, went in my car and started to sob. And that's okay, because that's what has to happen. You're feeling those feelings. You are getting those feelings out. And that is okay, because that's how you heal.
Exactly. I think one of the things that I just looked at your chapters in here and you talked about radical acceptance.
Oh yeah.
Right. And I think that is something that, and we talked about it earlier today too, about giving yourself grace, because I remember people telling me all the time, especially during my second divorce, which was highly, highly litigated. They were just always like, Becky, you shouldn't be so mad. And I'm like, please let me feel. I get to feel this. This is part of my grieving process. And as I'm feeling this pain, it doesn't mean I have to go and be unhealthy with that anger, but I need to allow it to go through my body so that I can then get on the other side of it. And so, yeah, I think that is something that, talk about that, kind of how you talked about it in the book, is the radical acceptance and how important that is to get to peace.
Well, and because one of the things is that I was blindsided. I literally was, because we had just been on a vacation to Cancun like the week before and gotten home. And I had no clue, none, that this was in the works. And I didn't know what radical acceptance was. And I had gone to a therapist, and I was sitting there talking, snotty mess and everything. And he was sitting on his little wheelie chair, and he looked at me after I was done telling him my story, and he said, "Are you done?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I'm done." And he goes, "No, are you done being a victim?" And I went, "Oh, okay." So that's when he started teaching me about radical acceptance. You will never get the why, and you will never get an apology, because if you are now, my divorce was not amicable. It was highly volatile, and some divorces are amicable. And I think that is amazing that people can be that adult about, you know what, this really isn't working. And we have kids, so maybe we're going to have grandkids together. So maybe we should actually be adults. But that wasn't my case. And so I had to learn that I was never going to get the reason why, and that I was never going to get an apology. And I had to learn that that's just the way it is. I can't control it. And because when you accept something, that means you're giving up control. You're giving up the control of trying to control that entire situation, their feelings, other people's feelings that are involved. All you can control is yourself. And that's when radical acceptance starts to build into your body. And it's the most freeing thing in the whole world to understand it, because you can be okay with not knowing why.
Do you feel like that was a really pivotal moment for you? Like, was that a moment where you're like, okay, I mean, it'd be great if it went away forever, but did you ever feel it coming back where you're just like, okay, why is this happening? You know what I mean? And continuing at least for me, it's a continual process. I'm constantly surrendering. I'm like, okay, let's try this again. Let's try it again.
Yeah, no, truly the radical acceptance was the pivotal thing for me. That and knowing myself that I could not stay in a place of anger because
Mm-hmm.
I'm an only child. I am very competitive. I always have been. And I knew if I chose to stay angry, I would live there and I would make somebody's life a living hell.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't going to do anybody any good. And it was the only person it was going to take energy away from was me. And I'm worth more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I understood that the forgiveness was not for him. It was all for me. And that once I gave up like holding on to anything of him, I knew I could control myself. I could accept, I could forgive, and everything started opening up. And the thing is once you let go of that
Mm-hmm.
bullshit, sorry, can I swear? Once you get rid of
Sure.
I just did. But once you get rid of all of that crap
Mm-hmm.
of trying to hold on to what's already gone, then you're opening up space in yourself to heal.
Yeah.
And there's the chapter about gratitude. Once you start practicing gratitude, and it's a practice because we are not born, it's not an innate thing. You have to practice it daily. And if you can only say out loud one or two things that you are grateful for, like literally there were days where I'm like, I'm grateful I brushed my teeth today. That was it. I was grateful I brushed my teeth today. I was grateful I had clean clothes to wear because that was really all there was. I started at base bottom and then worked up.
So I was going to say, if that was the case, I mean, a lot of people and a lot of women, especially, this happened to men too. I'm not saying it doesn't, but for you, you had talked about abandonment. You used the word abandonment, and also were left, which is very common. How
Mm-hmm.
did you start rebuilding? What did you do? Who did you reach out to? How did you create that support so that you could get your feet back on the ground?
Um, I weekly went to the support group that I was a part of. And I went through two sessions of it. It was a 13-week program that I went to two sessions of, and I became a small group leader
Mm.
after that. And then when I moved to
So you got
Utah,
connected to community, it sounds like.
yeah,
Mhm.
that created its community. And it was so funny. After the first session was over, and we were all standing in a circle and we were like, what we were grateful for and what we had learned. Um, and everybody was in different places in their divorces. Um, there was about 10 of us that was like, yeah, let's go to Applebee's and get 10 o'clock appetizers and stuff. And I had the thought in my head, it was that quick. It's like, oh, I need to call home and make sure that everything's okay. And then I went, oh, no, I don't.
I know.
No, I don't.
That's what I'm talking about. Those dots that connect. I remember my first divorce. I had moved out for 2 weeks and then came back after 2 weeks, and I remember going to work and leaving the salt and pepper out on the counter, and I came home and they were exactly in the same spot, and I was like, wow, okay, wow. Like, I mean, those realizations, that you
Yeah.
have because you've got such a pattern of behavior and
Yeah.
mode of going. It's just, it takes a little while to adjust,
It
right?
does. It does. And so when I left so that all of this was happening in South Dakota. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I moved back to Utah to help take care of my parents, I grew up here. But it wasn't familiar. There were still some people here that I had gone to school with and everything, but everybody was in different places in their lives. So
Mm-hmm.
I did reach out to a few people and, hung out. I learned how to golf, had never golfed before. Um, and, did the single life thing that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then, and then it was like, well, dating might be okay since I was already divorced. It's like, and then you get thrown into that whole,
Yes.
swamp of crap. And, everything had changed so much. So it was about learning who I was. That's what I really wanted to focus on, was figuring out who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't mom anymore. I wasn't taking care of my kids. I will always be a mom, but I wasn't taking care of anybody. I was no longer a wife, and I was like, who am I?
Yeah, your identity.
Yeah, my identity was taken. So that was really important to me, to create my own life, how I felt, and not have it attached to anyone else. So that was really important to me.
So now what you're doing, well, first of all, let's a little bit more about now you were aging. I mean, now you were taking care of your parents that were aging.
Mm-hmm.
How was that dating during that period? Because you didn't get married until 21, right?
Right. So I lived by myself. I had my own townhouse and stuff, and did the dating thing for about a year and a half. I dated briefly in South Dakota before I moved out here. So I was single for a while by myself. And then I had met Tim, who is my husband, and we dated, and then the pandemic hit.
Oh yeah.
So, it's like, oh, what did you guys do? Stayed at home and played cards.
Yeah.
That's really what it was. And in the midst of all of this, my mom and dad were still in their own condo. And I was helping, I was doing whatever grocery shopping I could for my parents and making meals and things like that. And then my dad started to have some really bad falls. And April of 2020, he fell backwards down a flight of stairs and put his head through a wall. And he came about that close to a stud. And they lived in one of those, 1970s condos where it was like, okay, you have the basement, and then you go up a flight of stairs, and then there's the main floor, and then you go up another flight of stairs. So there's 3 levels of stories.
Right.
And he put his head through. So at that point, I said to my mom, I said, okay, we're done. We're done with this. And that's when we made the decision to get a house together. And I said, I can take care of one house, but I can't take care of 2.
Right.
So we worked through that. The hardest part was, as my dad's dementia progressed, he was a runner, and sundowners was really, really hard. And my mom didn't understand it very well. And we had to make sure that there were locks on all the doors, that he was safe. And we moved into the house in May. His dementia progressed, and by the end of December, we got hospice involved to help us with, daily cares and things like that. And then by January, he died January 20th of 2021. So, and then 18 months later, my mom had her first stroke.
Wow. So I mean, it's just a lot of transition, and it's a lot of, so one of the things I love is that you have now chosen, I mean, first of all, let me ask you I kept meaning to ask you this question. What made you, I mean, some people go through divorces, but you went through a divorce and wanted to write a book. What made you write the actual book?
Because I know that there are a lot, I was so amazed at how many people had gone through what I was going through. And at the age, like we just said, the statistics, at the age I was going through, because when, as a Gen Xer growing up, I didn't hear anybody get divorced. Right. I really didn't know a lot of people that got divorced. And then now in my 50s, because you think, if in your head, when you're married, you think, okay, once we make it through 20, 25, it's all good because we're empty nesters, and then we can start living our lives. And that didn't happen. And I wasn't the only one that was happening to. And so that's what made me decide to write the book, because it's like, in the book, it's not just a story about divorce. It's a story about loss, divorce, and grief. And in that book, there are stories of one of my best friends was going through a divorce that was highly volatile, and her soon-to-be ex tried to kill her. And then there is a story of another friend of mine who was going through a divorce, and she had a son who committed suicide. And then my current husband, he's a widower. So
Mm.
and then my mom is also in that story about losing her
Mhm.
husband after 52
Mhm.
years and learning
Mhm.
what her new normal is. Because that's the other thing is like we are now in the introduction, I say that our life is made up of times where it's a before this and after that, and
Right.
we compartmentalize everything. And so when you have those segments of your life and you have to learn how to move and navigate to get to the other side of that before this after and now you're in the after part, how do I do that? And the reason I titled the book Moving Forward is because when anytime anybody would say to me, can't you just move on, I
Mhm.
literally wanted to throat punch them.
I know. My husband feels the same way about that exact same thing. Like, get over it. And he's like, excuse me, 27 and a half year marriage? Like, you don't just get over it.
You don't. But
You
well, and the thing is because if you really look at it, okay, I'm a word person. Words have
Mhm.
power, and when you
Mhm.
think about it, moving on means basically everything that happened
Right.
doesn't. You're not taking those lessons and
It's
those
it's
things.
the but. It's the
Yeah,
but, right?
yeah. It's like
Yeah.
none of that mattered. Well, yeah, it did. I spent
Mhm.
28 years of my life doing that.
Mhm.
I raised children.
Mhm.
So what do? You move forward. You take
Mm.
all those lessons with you. You take all of those experiences and memories with you, and they are a part of who you are as a human being now. So
Mm.
let's take this now person and let's move forward and learn and make some new memories and create a life, a new normal life.
Well, that is something that they say in 12-step work is take what works and leave the rest. And
Yeah.
it's, I like that one of my phrases I love to say is don't ever look back unless you're looking back to see how far you've come. So
Yeah.
you're looking back to see what you've learned, what you've, how, whatever you need to learn in order to move forward. But I love that you called it moving forward. And it's not a very big book. It's a
Mhm.
really easy read.
It
And I
is.
was like, good for you, because most people talk about doing books, but you actually wrote it.
I
And
did it. I actually I had an 8 month deadline and I wrote it in 3 weeks.
I,
So
I wrote my first book, I think, in 6 days because I didn't get it published, but I get it. When you have the format and you're in the flow,
yeah,
you just end
yeah,
up going, you know what I mean? Things like
yeah.
that. So kind of as we're wrapping up, I know that you are wanting to start support groups and things of your own and
Mhm.
online. Tell us a little bit about that and what your reasoning for doing that and what's the benefit for people being involved.
Okay, so my reasoning for doing it is because I truly believe that you know when you are going through situations like divorce or
Mhm.
loss like that, you need support.
Mhm.
You really do need support because you feel like you are the only person in the whole world who's ever
Mhm.
gone through this, and you're
Mhm.
not. And so I'm creating an online support group that will meet once a week for 13 weeks, 13 to 15 weeks. I haven't quite got that down yet, and it'll be over Zoom. And what we're going to do is we're going to have large group and small groups put together, and we will hold each other accountable. And there will also be a curriculum in that will help you learn about why you are feeling this way and what this is supposed to teach you. And there will be lessons in there about finances, about how to pick what questions you should ask an attorney when you're looking for a divorce attorney.
It's very,
And
very important.
yeah, it is. There's things in there that I didn't know before all of this that I know now. And that's the
Mhm.
beauty of having a support group is because there are questions that you can ask people who have already been there. And and then that happened with me, is we started talking about attorneys and they're like, oh, she's good. She's really good.
Yeah.
And so I knew I was going to be okay. But the biggest thing is that if I hadn't had the support group that I had, I probably would still be stuck in anger, and I wouldn't be as far along in a healing space as I am now. And my whole purpose for this was because when I moved back to Utah, there is nothing out here.
No, I know. I've been in the single world for a long time, here in this area as a location, and dated for many years, single for 8 years, as an older single. And it is tough. It is tough. I've also felt it was a real need, but I like that you're also doing it virtual, so that people can come from anywhere in the United States.
Yes.
And this is one thing that you mentioned, the word that you mentioned before we started this was connection. And tell us about why that's so important to have that community and that connection when you're going through a divorce.
Well, because the connection is because it's powerful. We are human beings that are human beings are hardwired for connection.
Yeah.
We're pack animals, and learning more about being in an isolated living situation, not necessarily just after my divorce, because I was living alone and I had never been alone in 28 years. That was really hard. And then moving again and not having anyone here except my parents, and then being a caregiver and caring for my parents, which really, really isolated me.
Yeah.
Because when you are caring for someone else, you are exuding all of your energy, all of your mental capacity onto caring for that other person instead of caring for yourself.
Yep.
So I feel like having the connection there with somebody that you can just, chat with online or even meet up and have coffee with, that's important. We need that connection and that community. And to have a space like that online where everybody's in that same boat and you've all got an oar and somebody's going to get tired, so you can oar for them.
Well, I know when I went through a lot of my support group, that when I was in Hawaii, I went to a weekly support group, and not all of them were dealing with divorce. They were dealing with a lot of different things, but it was so helpful for me to just go and be able to have a safe space where I could share. And I knew it wasn't going to leave there. I knew that every single person in there would love and accept me regardless of what I was feeling. I knew that I could be of support to them. And sometimes they would bring these crazy stories. I'm like, at least I'm not dealing with that.
Yeah.
So, I am 100% a believer in support groups, and I love that you're starting it. So if people want to reach out to you and find out when you're starting it or how to get involved and that sort of thing, I have on there your Facebook. Is that the best way for them to reach you right now?
Yep. Facebook or Instagram is the Shelly Anderson. So that's
awesome.
Yeah. The one thing I want to add is when in the introduction, you briefly added about how it affects your body, how grief affects your body.
Yes.
What a lot of people don't understand is that when you are in any kind of a traumatic situation, which a divorce is a traumatic situation, and a lot of people like to poo-poo it off, but it really is, and it's changing. It physiologically changes the wiring in your brain and changes the shape of your brain. And sadly, PTSD and CPTSD, we don't ever get over that. It just becomes a part of you, and it goes into your DNA. It changes your DNA. So learning how to heal from that is so important, because little things will trigger and make you reactive. So learning how to live with those and make sure that you are not, again, bleeding onto someone else.
Yeah, which is really important when you're getting into a further relationship. I have to say I'm kind of against my husband and I got together 6 weeks after his 27.5-year divorce. I was like, honey, that's so unfair that you didn't have to deal with all the dating. He's like, no, I dated like 7 women. And I'm like, okay, yeah, no. In 6 weeks, you have no idea. I said, don't even talk to me.
Yeah, and again, that's just my theory. And
no. I tell people all the time, don't do what I did. It worked out perfectly for me, but typically I would say, yes, take time. Don't rush in, because there are, you're just in life in general. It doesn't matter. We're all going to have triggers, and we all need to be able to identify them, see them, work on them, and not put that on the other person. and really take ownership of that. And that sometimes takes a little while for you to do that. So I love that suggestion.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Shelly,
you.
for taking time. And
Thank you.
and I was going to tell you, even though you're a beautician, I haven't used any dye at all.
I love your hair. I'm in that process. I actually am in this. This is like spray on stuff because the gray was showing. So, but I'm in the process of growing out my gray.
It was the most freeing moment of my life to
Yes.
never have to do that again. And it took me 3.5. I get stopped all the time. People are like, I love your hair. Do you like those highlights? I'm like, yep, natural. I got the skunk thing going on. Anyway, so I'm sure people do that when you're a beautician. They're always talking about their beauty stuff. So here I have one last question that I'd love to ask people at the very end is, what does divorcing strong mean to you?
Divorcing strong means being able to accept the things that you never thought that you could accept before and moving forward with your life and making sure that you are as strong as a person as you need to be. So,
yeah. Thank you. I love it. And people can find your book in the Amazon. Is that right?
Amazon. Yep. If you just go into the search and type my name, Shelly Summers-Anderson, that's the book that'll come up.
I love it. And thank you so much for sharing it. I'm going to just show real quick because I love showcasing husbands, good husbands. But there's your husband right there.
Yeah. That was our wedding. We got married actually in our backyard. And
I know, I read that.
We had a traditional Celtic hand fasting. We're both very Celtic people. We have Scottish, Irish, and Welsh. And he had his tartan, and that's why I have a lot of 4-leaf clovers tattooed.
Oh, well, I lived in Ireland for a year. So you probably didn't know that. But we'll have to chat a little bit more about that because it's a beautiful country and they love Americans. They really do. Like they just think we're a bit of crack, as they say. Right? Come in for the crack. Come in for the crack. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like CRAIC, right? Crack, like for the fun.
Oh, okay.
You know. Anyway, I someday I'll be heading back there and seeing all my friends again, which some of them are probably watching. But anyway, well, thank you so much, Shelly, for coming, and make sure you reach out to her, find out about her support group. And because I love that you're coming from a place of heart and service, because that's what they need in this space. We need a little bit more love, not judgment.
And compassion.
Right. Yep. And compassion. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Hold on one second. Just hold on one second. Thanks. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of the Divorcing Strong podcast. I'm Becky Sampson. I've been your host. And if this episode spoke to you, please share it with somebody that's going through a divorce, or with maybe, go back and rewatch it, because it really is important that we get the support that we need. Make sure you go to Amazon, get her book, read about the things, and get involved in her community. Because I truly, truly believe as well, for me, in the success I've had in my life, is connection is healing. Disconnection is isolation and feeling very alone. And you really just don't want to do this alone, because there's so many people out there that are willing not only to support you, but also are going through the same thing, that you could probably bless their lives as well. So just want to remind you, we are on all of the audio platforms. Every Tuesday and Thursday, we drop another episode, and you can also find us on YouTube. Like, subscribe, and share these episodes so that we can reach more people out there. And thank you so much. And we will see you on the next episode. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to the Divorcing Strong podcast. This episode is sponsored by Only Subpoenas, where we make subpoenas simple, powerful, and 100% compliant. If you're having a hard time getting the information you need to settle for a fair and equitable divorce, let us help you. Whether you're an attorney or you're navigating divorce on your own, subpoenas can uncover the truth, secure the evidence you need, and level the playing field. To see how we can help, book an appointment by visiting our website at onlysubpoenas.com.